It's 4 o'clock on a Monday, and you know what that means, don't you? It's time for another exciting episode of Taxi TV Live. Woohoo! Yeah, baby. This week starring special guest star Miss Andrea Stolpe. Yeah, baby. Oh, there's the microphone. And thank you, band. Thank you, fake audience. And we're going to bump elbows because nobody's shaking hands this week. Welcome to the coronavirus episode of Taxi TV Live. Why is there nobody showing up in the chat room? That's weird.
They're there. It's just buffering right now. I see them.
It's buffering? Okay. You're moving us. Okay. Anyway, hello, everybody. I am very excited to have Andrea here because we have known about each other for years, and yes, we've never actually met. We've never met, right?
Probably not. I've been stalking you a little bit. That was years ago. Stop now. I've got a handle on it.
That's good. Ariana, call it, please. Anyway, I'm excited. We don't do enough shows about songwriting. It's so weird. The chat is just not, nobody's showing up in there. Anyway, okay. What?
I see all them. So
okay, well, at some point I'm going to need to see them for when we do Q&A. Anyway, I'm in there twice. So I feel like we don't do enough shows about songwriting. And Andrea called me 3 weeks ago maybe and said we should know each other and maybe do some stuff together, road rally, taxi TV.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, come on over, but wait until the coronavirus gets out of control. I was going to wear, I've got a gas mask. I was going to wear that on the show today. But let me read your bio, because they should know who is sitting next to me today. Andrea Stolpe is a Los Angeles-based songwriter, author, performing artist, and educator. Mm-hmm. She's worked as a staff writer for EMI, Elmo Irving, and Universal Music Publishing, with songs recorded by artists such as Faith Hill, Juliana Hough, Daniel Lee Martin, Jimmy Wayne, and others. And she teaches at the University, no, that's not the University of California, it's USC.
Southern California, yeah.
Yeah, University of Southern California, that's weird, Southern's missing. Mm-hmm. University of Southern California's Thornton School of Music, and is the author and instructor of Berklee College of Music's online course, Commercial Songwriting Techniques. Yes. For the past 10 years, Andrea has taught melody, harmony, and lyric writing courses for Berklee Online. She continues to tour and serve as a guest clinician nationally and abroad. She enjoys working to develop writers, part of Sonic Art Production, working to develop writers. Is this missing a word?
Let me help you with that, because I actually don't do that anymore with Sonic Art Productions, but we do Writer to Writer is a retreats that we're starting up now. Yeah. And
your husband's an engineer, right?
Yes.
So I don't know whether to give you a hug or to feel sorry for you. My wife, my first wife would say feel sorry for you.
No, I have had to listen to the same song thousands of times.
Yeah.
For, trying to fall asleep at night, just thinking, when is this going to end?
Punching in syllables.
But but it's been, I have had my own engineer to help and guide me and make demos for me all the way up. So it's huge. Yeah. It's huge. It's definitely an area that I didn't have to struggle with because I had him.
And you have kids.
We do, yeah. We have 2 kids.
So, that had to be tough, balancing your career, his career, because, these are not normal jobs with normal hours.
No, they're not.
Yeah.
No, they're not. And you can't plan creativity.
Right.
Is the other thing. So I definitely have had to develop strategies for writing in 15-minute spurts sometimes, or writing while I'm driving, just talking into my phone and recording ideas, When I'm on a walk or something, I'll have ideas. So the way that I write is very different than it was before.
See, we just got rid of the kids. We'd give the next door neighbor a jar of jelly and a jar of peanut butter and a loaf of Wonder Bread, so they'd take them their ears for the day.
Right.
It was a long, long time ago that I was married to my first wife, but she was definitely a studio widow.
Yeah.
And when our first daughter was born, it was a profound moment in my life that made me grow up a little bit anyway. I came home one day like 4 a.m. from a session, and she said, do you realize you have a daughter that's 6 months old and you haven't changed one diaper yet?
Right. Yeah.
I started hanging out more, but I didn't change any diapers.
Yeah.
I'm just not. I did with the.
That's another
other kids.
video. How you
Right.
evaded that bullet.
Let's talk about the books for a moment.
Okay,
You brought
sure.
a couple, which we are going to give away. What we're going to do is have you guys comment under this show on YouTube, and Ariana's going to pick the best comment or the most fruitful comment, and you will win a book or two.
Okay.
So,
sure.
yeah, here, I'll hold them up and get them all germy for you. I did have a little cold over the weekend, but
So
there we
beginning
go.
songwriting
okay.
and popular lyric writing. This is the book that is companion to the online course.
Oh,
It
okay.
does stand alone, but this one was written first. Beginning songwriting is exactly as it sounds, but I wasn't really keen on what other songwriting books at the time had offered in terms of much more industry advice rather than songwriting tips and tools. So it kind of hopefully goes beyond just the song form and basic things that I think are in a lot of books, and involves a chapter on theory for songwriters. And theory can be a real
Fascinating.
difficult, challenging thing to learn, and I think the way that we deliver it to songwriters should be different than the way that we would study traditional theory.
So, was it hard for you to transition from being a songwriter to an educator? Not that you have to quit being one to be the other, but songwriting is a learned craft with a certain amount of the muse and creative soul all thrown in, and then all of a sudden you have to tell other people how to do it. How did you learn how to do that?
Yeah. Well, as I was telling you before, I really feel like my time in Nashville was my master's degree. So despite not being told by others, in as much as you would in a lecture in school, how to write, I was being taught. And a lot of that teaching was on lyric writing, because it was Nashville lyric writing driven songs.
It's really hard for people who've not been there and witnessed it with their own eyes to understand the level of expertise and the demand that writers put on co-writers there. So good for you for surviving that crash course.
Well, they always say it's a 5-year town.
Yeah.
Right? So, and what that really means, I think, is to really understand you can't just put some twang on it and then call it a country song. It's not a country. It's really about being on the pulse of what makes the culture tick.
Right.
And then to be innovative in that and not just kind of rewrite what you think would be a typical country song. That's where I think that the challenge really is. And that doesn't come for years of writing lots and lots of songs for a particular market.
And there's always been, at least since Shania Twain and probably before her, but there's always been this, wrestling. It's almost like, what do they call it? Guys pulling on ropes.
Yeah, tug of war.
Yeah, it's a tug of war with the kids today and the old guard. And the old guard, when the old guard definitely ran the country music industry, Shania Twain came along. It's like, that'll never work. And it worked really well. And they still didn't want to admit it.
Yep.
And now, it's a hip-hop beat, and just about anything else you can do with country or country pop on top of it.
Right.
So has that changed the rules of the game in Nashville, where people are starting out with a beat and writing around that or to that?
Yeah, there was a point halfway through my Nashville career where we would see more people come into a co-writing session with a laptop and Logic, and they were co-writing. So that's really different, where it's like, what, you're not, first of all, going to sit there with a guitar and you're not going to contribute lyrics. You're just going to tell me when I've sung something that you like? I mean, but
I can't even imagine what that must have been like.
Yeah. It does feel like it pigeonholes. I felt pigeonholed even more so as a lyric melody, a top line person, really. The more that went along, but I think like anything else, I've had to become strategic about the collaborations that I choose to do. And I think that's an example of being strategic. I think the youth of the culture are always going to drive things. And so it is challenging. Getting back to your other question, I'm getting older. I have children and other responsibilities and, things I care about. And that might change my focus, what the kinds of songs that I write and the market that I'm writing for within the market. And that's okay.
It's got to be really hard for artists. Like I can't, maybe I'm wrong about this, but I can't imagine Faith Hill doing a hip hop song.
I can't imagine that either. I think her fans would not like that.
Yeah. Some artists might chase that to try and garner younger fans to keep the career going or reinvigorate it, but you are who you are to an extent, and it's hard for somebody like her to... The Beatles could reinvent. An artist like Faith Hill, not quite as much, I have a feeling.
I hear what you're saying, and I think that is so core to what I wanted to talk about today.
Oh, okay.
Because I think that so many times, and I started out this way, we look at the industry and think, I could write for that industry. And we're trying to sort of emulate. And it's great to emulate. It's great as a guitar player to pick up your guitar and memorize other people's songs. And as a songwriter, we do that. Ultimately, we are the product of our influences. But when you decide that's the market I want to sound like, most of the time I think that emulation is really all we get across. And we forget that, wait a minute, what do I sound like when I'm just doing something that I instinctually know is good? So I think we lose touch with that voice. And when we go back to, wait a second, what's instinctually good? When do I sound my best? What lines have I written? What melodies? What harmonic progression and groove do I think, that's my best 10% right there? And then look at what part of the industry needs that. Where does that fit? Because it's flipping the coin. It's looking at it from the other point of view.
It's a problem we've always had here at Taxi is that a certain number of our members write music that is stuck in the musical generation they grew up in.
Sure.
And a lot of them are mid-70s. I call it, strummy singer-songwriter types.
Sure.
And it's hard for them to transition into contemporary, whether it's the beat, the vocal phrasing, the melodic structure of a song.
Yeah.
And they're not that far away from it, and they have a certain modicum of talent. They just need to reorient. And they don't want to because they listen to what's on the radio or on Spotify, and they say, gee, I don't want to be a part of that. But I still want to have a job in the industry.
Sure.
That's tough because you do have to do what you just described, which is look at the industry and go, where do I fit in? And then how can I bring my A game to that segment?
Yeah, I mean, I think the reality is, we can't have it our way all the time. Or 100% our way any of the time.
I'd be happy, like 3% of the time.
Right, exactly. So once we start talking about making a living out of this, then, we definitely need to have our business hats on to understand what are they going to pay me for? Because what we were talking about before, and you had guests on here saying the same thing, but when we write a song that we're going to pitch to someone else, we're essentially showing them, look at who you could be. Isn't this amazing?
Showing the artist trying to capture their imagination who they could be.
Yes.
And vis-a-vis that song that you wrote.
Exactly.
Right.
And when I pitch to that artist, it needs to be something that likely they can't do themselves, because I think that tends to happen too, where we write songs and yes, they're good, but the artist could also write something similar, certainly with collaborators of their choice if they're an artist of some caliber.
Yeah, no problem. Even if they're not such a high caliber anymore, like, please let me in your camp.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, also that should be hard to do.
Yeah.
It is very hard to do. So I think we need to keep sight of that. But I love something that you said about that there is quality. There's sort of there's an undercurrent of something that is working, even in those songs, that the whole of it is maybe not pitchable.
Yeah.
And I think when we get feedback, the feedback, whether it's from industry people or a song contest or, taxi feedback, there's truth in the feedback. But we also need to kind of have that filter. And how do I understand this feedback? How do I use it to my benefit?
Yeah, and how do I even just not smack it down? Because how the hell would you know? I wrote the song, and you obviously don't know anything about anything. So,
Yeah.
I'm going off my script now and not going to do these things in order. But look, if somebody criticizes Taxi, I've gotten better over the years about being open-minded about it, but in that moment, it's the fight or flight thing, and you want to fight it.
Yeah.
You do. It's your baby. I get it, and I understand that for songwriters. But when you're in a co-write situation in Nashville, you can't afford fight or flight syndrome. In that you've got to be open, but you don't want to lay down and take it either. You've got to stand up for what you know is working, and know when to be flexible and moderate your thinking. So how do you teach yourself that skill? So
true. Well, I think one of the things that I do is I have several co-writes going on several songs, I should say, going on at the same time. Because what that does to my brain is it tells me no one of these songs is the end-all be-all. You are not your one song. And for me, that's important because advice. I can then also stay a little more objective, because I can say, well, out of these three, I seem to keep going back to this one, and I feel like I really got the pulse of that one, and I'm excited about that. When I start to spend too many hours on any one song, I lose that objectivity, and I start to feel like everything really, if this song, it's make or break right now. The song's got to work. I think with respect to working with a collaborator, also recognizing that, look, we could finish this song and I could choose my relationship with this person, if it gets to that point. And this is all internal dialogue. I can choose either to sustain a good relationship for networking and just, sustaining my own career and positivity and optimism.
Super important in Nashville.
Yeah. Or I could really fight for the idea. But there's nothing keeping me from saying, you know what? I think where we've gone with this song is good, and let's play it for a few people and see. And then maybe after that, I'm going to try taking it in this direction and see if I can get something that receives maybe more ecstatic feedback, or people just latch onto it. So it's not as if it's black and white and I have to either sacrifice everything or sacrifice relationship and stick with my song idea.
Is there a generosity of spirit in most co-writes where it's not a battle of the wills?
Yes.
Where a mature, seasoned writer may hear you say, okay, I'll go down this road with you, but I also hear something else. So please don't be offended if I go home tonight, take it down this other road as well.
Yeah.
And because if nothing else, they're looking for a cut and a hit too.
Everybody is, right? And so there's two people in a co-write, right? And
well, not
just
anymore.
Like a relationship, right? There's 14 people in a co-write, right? No, but it's also so you've got two people who are trying to understand each other and write something that sounds like it's from one person, one unified person. And so it's my job to try to make you understand what I'm going for, and it's your job to try to make me understand. And so it could be that I'm not not quite able to show you what it is I have in my head, too.
Right, and if you can't do that with the other writer, then how's the artist who you're going to pitch it to supposed to glom onto it?
Yeah. So, and I might go home and really pursue that idea that I had, bring it back the next day and say, in my mind, I wrote 95% of this, percent of this song, but I'm still going to be like, look what we made. Because you can't sit and count words and say, I'm really the better melody writer.
And that's why they have the 5-year plan in Nashville, because it takes people 5 years to come to that realization, I think.
Yes. Yeah. So it's very much 50-50. We're all going for the same thing. We used to say, 50% of something is better than nothing. 0% of anything.
Before he
So-
passed away, Ralph Murphy and I were very close friends. Whenever he came to LA, he would always stay at my house. And I learned so much from that guy at our dinner table and on golf courses with him. And he always said, it's just divvied up equally. Even if you're the guy who did nothing more than get the coffee the day the hit was written, someday you're going to be the guy that comes up with the hit and somebody else is going to be getting the coffee. And you just got to roll with it.
So true.
Yep.
And I mean, I've been in the room plenty of times where I feel like I really haven't helped at all. I just had an off day, I mean, and that's the thing, in collaborations, you're pretty much going to go in there and just ideas are flying around. Hopefully you can keep the momentum going, but your job is to just be a team, be part of a team.
Do you strategize before let's say you're in Nashville, and I would assume that you're going to do 1, 2, maybe even 3 writing sessions in a day.
Yeah.
And you look at who you're going to be writing with. Oh, I've written with that person before, so there's a level of comfort, and you kind of know how they play tennis, if you will.
Sure.
You know that their serve is their strong suit. Somebody else that you don't know, do you go back and look at the cuts they've had? How do you study them so that you go in with the right thing to present? Because that's a big part of the game, is getting them to go, I like that, let's work on that. And if you don't, it's a bust.
For sure. So I would definitely be familiar with who I'm going to be writing with. But I think also part of that is understanding your own strengths. So when I go into a session, what do I feel is the thing that I can contribute? So it's what can I contribute to this product that's going to make it stronger. So instead of kind of what do they do that I can use to make me look good, before my first co-writes, I probably throughout the first year in Nashville, I swear I would go into co-writing situations that would scare the living daylights out of me because I know when I get in the room I would be blank, no ideas, nothing. And so I wrote
That's got to be terrible.
the whole song before going in. And I would go in with several ideas. I would have a chorus that I thought was pretty strong, and I would just, everything was fair game. My best ideas were already written, but I didn't tell them that. I'd be like, well, I got this idea, And just
so you're a
keep it to
stalker and a
myself.
liar.
And a liar.
Now we know 2 things about her. Okay.
Definitely. But what that did was enable me to put forth, my strongest foot. And it helped me to make the best use of my collaborators' time.
Yeah.
It helped me to make sure that I could accomplish what I wanted to, which was eventually have a great song that they would play to their publisher and see, like, who's this Andrea girl? What's her deal? And you'd be like, well, she has no deal. You should listen to her. And then I would be able to go in and be like, are you okay?
I'm going to live. I've got cough drops.
Okay. So that was a really helpful,
I'm going to go cough it out. Keep talking.
do it. So that is really, really helpful. But getting back to this idea of how do you know what your strengths are? And I think this is where the craft has to come in. And one great thing to do is to demo a song as just a straight ahead guitar vocal, as well as the full demo. So you might have a full production that you really dig, but it's also wonderful to then just have a stripped down version so that nothing you've got in the production is going to distract, or the artist can't say, well, I wouldn't really do it that way, so can't hear the song, it's not my style, and then they might pass over it. So if you've got the ability to just do a simple guitar vocal, piano vocal, now certain songs, of course, are not going to do well in that context, and so you'll have to, manage that aspect of the song. But then you can really focus on the song itself, getting a demo singer that is current, someone that sounds like someone within that genre that you could say, okay, this demo singer is not going to get in the way of the song. It's actually going to help the song to really speak and reach the listeners you're trying to reach. And so that can be an important aspect. And I think about demoing as the manner in which I help the listener, this for industry people mostly, right, to understand what I mean with the song, where I think the song is going to fit. So I think that's an aspect. Again, I was going at that from what are my strengths, but when it's just the song in its bare bones form, sometimes that's more effective than a demo that can sometimes turn off the listener, particularly if the sound is not something the industry person can say, wait a minute, let me pretend I didn't hear that and imagine it a different way. They're never going to do that. They have too many songs available to them to bother.
That was the worst tickle in my throat I've ever had.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
Anyway, if brings me to a question.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to scoot closer to you, give you coronavirus. Anyway, if you are pitching ultimately to a female,
Yeah.
are you a big believer in have a female vocal and think about the key that sits best?
Yeah, I would certainly do that. I had some difficulty with my own vocal sometimes pitching in the country market because I wasn't
Twangy enough?
my vocal was it just was a little bit more original, we'll say. It was different than what they're used to hearing. So again, I think anything that we can do that gets us out of the way of the song is a smart thing to think about.
I still run into a lot of people that say, well, it's an R&B song. Can't they hear through that? It's like, why would you want to make them do,
Yeah.
It doesn't seem that hard, but you've put up an obstacle that doesn't need to be there. Mm-hmm. And Lord knows.
It's like your passive-aggressive aunt. Don't you know what I mean? No, actually, I don't.
I don't think I've ever had one of those.
Yeah. You can have mine.
I hope she's watching today.
Well.
Okay. So let's talk about some specifics. One of the bullet points you sent me was my friends love my song.
Yeah.
Oh, what the heck's the matter with me? So
you let me know when you need a stretcher, and I'll just kind of ride out the rest of the jet.
I have like the worst post-nasal drip going. Why was it passed over?
Yeah.
My friends love my song.
Yeah.
Why was it passed over?
Yeah.
I'll be right back while you're covering.
No problem. No problem.
Sorry, guys.
So I think when we're playing our songs for other people, it's really helpful to ask specific feedback. So even if you get complimentary response from your song, like, oh yeah, you really liked it. Well, in terms of the song parts, melody, lyric, chords, and groove, they might not really know what some of those parts are, depending on who you're having listen. They might be able to tell you, if you ask them, which of those elements do you feel like you really jived with best? If any of those elements were taken away, one of them, wasn't really about the chords, or if the lyric was kind of, would you still like the song? What do you think connected you to the song the most? You can ask them about specific sections, or there's questions like, what do you think the chorus was? What do you feel like the main message was? But really understanding why did they like the song, and you're gonna get a little like, not really being able to verbalize.
They liked it because you wrote it.
Yeah, that's a little bit of an issue.
And they couldn't do it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
The bar is different than, being in a co-write in Nashville.
Yeah.
And having a family member or friend go, that's great.
Yeah. And they're proud of you.
Yeah.
But I think that the beautiful thing about studying songwriting is that you end up being able to strengthen your own instinct. Because if you haven't written 10 songs, you can't say that one of them is your best work. It really, 90% of what we write is not our best 10%. And so that's the thing that pro writers, whom we're pitching along our songs alongside, are doing, is they're writing a lot. And they're not concerned so much about, is this the best thing I ever wrote? God, I hope so, because it's the only thing I've got going on right now. You
or
have
it's
to write
the last song syndrome.
Yeah.
It's the last thing they wrote. And,
Yeah.
and I understand that because you hopefully get better every time.
Yeah.
So
Or not.
What do you do? What do you
Sometimes
do?
you plateau for all
You
of
mentioned that you had exercises for some of this stuff. What's a good exercise to be able to accept feedback that is at a
Okay.
more torturous level than what your
Yeah.
passive-aggressive aunt might give you.
I never play anybody only one song. I would rather play a person half, like a verse and a chorus of 3 songs, and be like, so which one do you jive with the most? And which one did you instantly like?
And are you talking in a pitching situation? Or are you talking just in hanging out with your writing friends, trying to see what resonates?
Hanging out with writing friends,
Okay.
yeah, in a writing group or with my publisher. I'll play in several things at once. And it's often that people can tell you what's working with a song much more easily than they can tell you what's not, and help you to understand what you need to do to change it. The worst feeling in the world, I think, as a writer, is for someone to be lukewarm about something. And then their feedback makes you think that, oh God, do I have to rewrite the whole song? Like, where would I even begin to make the changes to the story that you're talking about? Because if I change one thing, it's this ripple effect, and this is wrong, and my chorus is too long, and there's not enough repetition, and it's not clear what it's about. Oh God, it's like, you know what, just...
Nashville publishers can give you that, though. They're the best.
Oh yeah.
2 lines into a chorus, and they can tell you exactly what's not working.
Right.
And it's hard. At least I found, even though I wasn't the writer, but I would take stuff from Taxi and pitch it to Nashville publishers, and you walk out of the room going, I just learned something.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
You think you know it all till you meet those guys, because their bar is really high, and their talent is strong enough that they can defend that bar really well.
Yeah. But sometimes not. Sometimes.
Yeah, I've been lucky. I've only met the good ones. I have yet to meet a bad one.
Wow.
Yeah. I've got to say.
I don't believe you.
No, seriously. I can, guys like, I've known Jim Catino since he was like, a puppy.
Yeah.
Cliff Aldrich III,
Yeah.
I've known Cliff Jr., his dad. A bunch of those guys that every time I walked out of the room, I'd go, they deserve to have that job.
Yeah. They do. They listen to hundreds of thousands of songs.
Yeah, and they're big fans. Yeah. They want to find a hit.
Yeah.
People think that they want to shoot stuff down.
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
They want it to be great because they want to pick up the phone and call somebody, Faith Hill, and say, I've got a song that's going to, it's a career-making song for you.
Yeah, yeah. So other exercises, though, because I really didn't dig into much.
Sorry.
No. I want to make sure I actually give people some content here. So exercises besides playing a couple of songs rather than just one. Sometimes I think it's important to remember that when we're writing, you don't have to finish a song. Sometimes saying, I'm going to write a 4-line verse, moving into a 4-line chorus, so that I can practice that kind of minimalism that is so hard to write, that simplicity. It kind of forces you to look at, am I comfortable putting my title in the first line of the chorus and repeating it over and over again? And if I'm not, does that give me insight into why I can't seem to get clarity in my messages? Because I've got all these other ideas floating around. So there's tools of the craft that we can definitely... Melody. A lot of times, wonderful songwriters, but they'll have... a melodic motif for line 1, so we'll sing the verse, da 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 da, and then line 2 we'll change it, da 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 da. Line 3, da 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 da. Line 4, da 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 da. I mean, you try. I can't even sing that back, and I wrote it. So,
I'm going to get a YouTube notice because now my show won't get monetized. Kidding. Anyway.
So I think that that's another thing to recognize when people say to you, your melodies aren't strong or aren't memorable.
Eminently forgettable.
For that, yeah. Then sometimes it can be that what you need to do is say which melody motif, which theme that I've got for each line here is the most memorable. And stop trying to vary everything you do. We need repetition to cause tension. Without repetition, it's just a meandering, kind of like what I'm doing right now. Just talking and talking and talking and talking. Nobody wants to listen to that.
So I can go cough some more and you can just keep talking and talking and
talking.
talking.
Let me tell you, right?
That was like the worst cough I've ever had in my life.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, I survived.
Yeah.
When you are in a co-write situation, how often do pro writers invoke craft with each other.
All the time.
So do they actually refer to like a craft mechanism and say, well, maybe we should treat it like this, and actually call, that, I don't even know if craft mechanism is the right descriptor.
I know what you mean. I think different writers, we talk about craft in a different way.
Yeah, how?
So if I say sensory language, somebody else might say furniture, It's the same idea. We might think, oh, I love how you wrap that melody around to the next line. I love how you rhymed, internally. So there might be some more basic ideas. Okay. Or just like, well, that verse feels too short. What should we do? Or do we need a pre-chorus? So we definitely talk about craft. Because frankly, inspiration runs out. It does when we're in our living room writing, and it does in a co-write. And eventually you have to look at what have we actually got here. And what do you want to write for the bridge? Well, let's see what we've already said. Maybe it doesn't need a bridge. Or if it did, what could we say? Well, let's talk about the future. Or
what do you do? What's a good exercise for the meandering melody, the eradication of meandering melody? That's hard to say. Right.
Well, you're the one using the big words here.
I only do that when I'm near death. I loved your stretcher line.
Okay. Well, yeah. I think it depends on the writer. I'm more of a, I love tools and I love craft, and it's gotten me out of a lot of hard, mind-numbing situations where I don't know what to do. If I don't have craft, I don't get to finish songs or start any new ones, because craft is the guide for my inspiration. Craft enables me to do my sensory writing pages every day, even if I don't feel like it.
So what do you do if you're writing by yourself?
Yeah.
Maybe in preparation to go to Nashville and do a co-write, and you feel that you've got a meandering melody, what craft tool do you pull out of your quiver?
Yeah. I would sit down at my piano, more with my guitar, and I would push record. And I would sing a variety of different melodies. I would think about melodic techniques as I do. I can shorten the notes I'm singing. So if my tempo is like this, I can sing da-da-da-da-da, right? Mm-hmm. So that's very different than da-da, da-da-da-da-da. Those are long notes. But I don't recognize what I'm doing until I hold it up against these tools. Melodically, you can do pitch. You can look at what are your pitches doing. Shapes, like I'm ascending, da-da-da-da, or da-da-da-da-da, descending. Or I can do big jumps, like somewhere over the rainbow, right?
Now my show is definitely not getting monetized.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. We'll just mute that.
Mute that. Okay. Or I can do rhythmic things, where I'm changing the lengths of the notes to be shorter or longer. I'm changing where I sing the melody in terms of late in the bar, before the bar, downbeat of the bar. I'm manipulating things very thoughtfully, though.
And are the ways you manipulate it, are those driven by current craft of what's going on in the marketplace? Because let's say, starting stuff on not on the downbeat anymore, has been a thing for probably close to 10 years. That definitely was like a notable transition in melody or in lyric phrasing as well. So what happens when that's over and whatever becomes the next trend? Mm-hmm. Do you then have to start sitting down and studying that trend and going, why does this work? How do they accomplish it? And then pull that out of your bag of tricks in a writing session? And does it make you, to do that, do you feel like you're still being true to yourself as a writer, or are you chasing somebody else's shtick?
Right. Some days I'm totally chasing somebody else's shtick and I don't even know it.
Wow.
I thought what I did was really cool, and then I hear somebody else and I'm like, oh man.
Yeah.
But I think too, the very static melodies, on staying on one note for a long time is a thing. But I think the idea will never go out of be a fad. That contrast between our sections is what makes songs have a hit chorus.
That would be the last thing I would give up as a songwriter. If I had to
Yes.
take one aspect of craft with me to a desert island,
Yes.
craft would be the one. I mean, contrast would be the one
Would
that
be
I
the
would
one
take.
thing.
Yeah.
And in commercial writing, where we're trying to pitch to other people, we have to have a vocabulary of contrast. What makes contrast? Gosh, there's so much we could say about that. But if we're trying to write for a commercial market, we have to be able to draw those tools out of our bag. Otherwise, we're just kind of floating on the waves of whatever's current.
Yeah, as human beings, we're wired with Broca's area, which is part of the brain that sits above the ear, and it looks for contrast, and that's what when Broca's area hears contrast, it goes, oh, that's novel and memorable, and that's what makes a chorus stick. They've actually done studies about that.
Sure.
Otherwise, they're just a bunch of monkeys,
Right.
mimicking.
Right.
So,
But I think in answer to your question, I would not determine I'm going to write after the downbeat melodies with tons of rest space because, that's what so-and-so just did. And he had a hit record last year, so it's going to be awesome.
oh, that's so last year.
Which really is like 2 years ago.
Right, exactly.
So but sometimes I think that also it's important for my creative spirit to allow for that critical ear to be there, but also not to let it determine whether or not I finish a song that day, because that internal judge can be so harsh. I could always find a way to shoot down something I just wrote. Always. There's
That's a good
plenty of
talent to
reasons
have.
not to finish an idea. And the longer I work on an idea, hours go by and I start to really resist finishing it. It really seems suspicious that I could write something that I would think is that good, and then I'll end up tucking it away.
Wow. I think you just gave a lot of people license to procrastinate. 'Cause, maybe that's the difference between an amateur and a pro, is an amateur would walk away from stuff just out of frustration. A pro would walk away
Just
from
finish it.
Yeah, knowing that it's not happening.
Finish it. It's not happening, so finish it. Give yourself 20 minutes and say, I'm going to allow that cliche to sit there, because that's what it is today. And then I'm going to work over here on this song.
Let's talk about cliches. It's an underused word.
Yeah.
It used to be so prominent in the vocabulary of people that teach songwriting or talk about songwriting.
Sure.
And now, God, you turn on Spotify and it's like a cliche playlist.
Okay.
So many, especially in the urban, urban pop market.
Yep. Yeah.
Ooh, baby, baby.
Yeah.
It's just so bad. And I've grown up in the industry. I've been in the industry for like 40 some years.
Yes.
And all I've ever been taught, whether it was engineering or production or songwriting, is craft, craft, craft. And cliche is the antithesis of craft.
Yeah.
And yet I hear cliches in modern pop that work really, really well.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the people who taught me what I know, I feel them sitting on my shoulder going, that's crap.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's not. It works in context.
In context, and I think that's the big word.
Yeah.
I always ask myself, okay, what's driving this song? Can I mention artists?
Yeah.
Okay. So, if James Taylor has recently said in an interview in American Songwriter that it's important that we understand, we ask ourselves, is this a song or is this entertainment? And there's nothing wrong with simply being entertaining. Mm-hmm. There are times where I just want to be entertained. I just want to groove. I really don't care what I'm listening to as far as lyrics go, but I want to groove. That's not going to fly in certainly as a staff writer in Nashville. You need to bring content, but think about what country songwriting is all about. It's the message. You will barely ever. I can't even think of a song with a diminished chord in it. It's really static when it comes to your chord progressions. You might hear your two majors every once in a while. There's a borrowed chord.
But yet they're always demanding fresh melodies in Nashville, which is
yes.
there are only so many notes.
Melody and lyric, melody and lyric, and that's not to say that you can't involve more experimental chord movements. But It's not the driving force.
Yeah.
And so it is all about context. So with cliches, in Nashville, I always got the feedback that they would say, well, I hate to tell you to water it down. But I think what I now understand that they were telling me is I write very dense lyrics. It's descriptive. It's like reading a short story. Mm-hmm. It's creative writing stuffed inside of a country song. Which I could see that as a problem, or which I did for many years. I struggled with how do I make myself a little more like that or that or that or that, until I realized, now wait a second, this is a unique characteristic of my songs. What I need to understand is how to allow more cliche, which is more just language that I don't need to decipher what it means. I just know. It's familiar, more of that kind of language that aerates and kind of gives the lyric space, so that the listener is not constantly thinking and thinking and thinking.
Yeah,
it's
if they have
not
to
so
work
heavy.
at it.
Yeah.
It's light a candle, pour a glass of wine time, that's great. But,
Yeah.
if you're in rush hour traffic,
Yeah.
you don't want that.
So it's context. And I think is like I tell my writers in class and on my retreats, it's really all about what's driving your song right now. And if it's not the lyric and it's clearly something else, great. Then maybe you don't need to take that feedback that says, well, but this lyric, maybe you can say to that person, you know what? Well, don't say this out loud, but you can think it. You might not be my market. So I'm going to go to someone who's really familiar with what's driving this market and see if I get some better feedback.
Interesting thing, talking about the market. In Nashville, if I had to venture a guess, and I go there more than the average out-of-towner goes there, or have gone there, but haven't spent as much time, obviously, as somebody who's moved there to become a hit songwriter and given it their all. My observation is that almost everybody writes with a target in mind. They know they're not just writing what emotes and hoping they can find a place for it. They go in knowing Faith Hill is going to start recording in 3 months, and they want to be first in line with a song that she's going to cut.
Sure.
And so they go in with that target. But then are you saddled with this? Now it's not just you and the co-writer each contributing your thing, but now you've got to write to what will appeal to Faith, and what will take Faith's career up a notch so that it gets played on radio and it's a hit.
Sure.
That's a lot of voices in your head.
That is a lot of voices. And I think, I don't know, I can't speak for everybody, but I think that to try to manage all those voices and have them all come to agreement is unrealistic.
So what do? How do you mitigate that problem and limit the number of voices?
I think one thing you do is allow yourself plenty of opportunities to pitch your songs in different situations. So you are not the only one trying to be a publisher. When you're pitching your songs, you're acting as your own publisher. Right. And being able to receive feedback from someone that says, there's something here I'm hearing that would be good for some other artist.
Right, that you didn't imagine.
And I would really? I never even thought about that.
Oh, that's a great idea.
So
a great point.
That is, I think, important.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the benefits is through Taxi, it's so feasible to pitch your songs in various, to various needs.
Right.
That you can, through even just that act of having that deadline and saying, okay, I'm going to finish this, I'm going to send it in. It's almost like, I'm going to risk something right now, and that's hard to do. I'm going to risk not being heard the way I'd like to be heard. I'm going to risk not getting a song cut, which it took me six years to get a song cut, and I had publishers,
I think Diane Morin once told me it took her 6 years.
Oh, well, she and I should buddy up. It's and I think I told you before, even as I had a publisher, I was a Taxi member.
That's right.
Because you don't stop trying to think about taking it into your own hands and saying, I really think that this is a potential for me. But I think just the act of putting yourself out there, for me, it makes me think about what did I just do? And then I'm kind of faced with, maybe some of the issues with that song would be, but if I never put it out there, I can kind of live in this safe zone of, it's great, I know it's great, everybody should love it, my friends love it, my family loves it,
So my family and I were on vacation in Cancun a couple of years ago.
Okay.
Totally off topic,
Lovely.
but very relevant.
Am I supposed to imagine you in a swimsuit right now?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, that James Bond little, Goldfinger
Awesome.
bathing. Yeah, never happened in my world. Anyway, and I told the story on stage at the Road Rally last year. Absolutely true story. Like every morning of my life, even when I'm on vacation, sadly I sleep with my laptop right under me in bed. And the first thing I do when I wake up is pull out the laptop and look at it and whatever, usually it's checking emails.
Yeah.
So I was looking at new taxi signups and I see the name Jonathan Cain.
Okay. Oh.
Yeah, that's exactly the face I made. I went, oh. and I literally remember being fear like overtook me for the moment because we've had big artists that have signed up for taxi and they think because they had a hit in 1983 that we should forward everything they do now.
Yeah.
And that the pearly gates are going to open up for them and taxi is the avenue. So he actually typed in his email address wrong and his emails were bouncing back. So when I got back from vacation, I called him up and said, Jonathan, it's Michael Lasko from Taxi. Hi.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
why are you calling me?
Right. Great guy. And he and I probably spent about an hour on the phone that day, and he talked at length about how hard it was for him to be taken seriously writing country in Nashville because he was this huge, like mega pop guy, stadium pop, if you will. And he eventually sent me probably 30 of his songs. I was so impressed with his craft. And there was stuff in there that it should have been cut, but it probably wasn't right for the time or the artist. And it's got to be very frustrating for people that he's got craft. Nobody could listen, no Nashville publisher could listen to what he's got and deny his craft.
Yeah.
And the guy has a gift. There are very few people that I've met in my 40 years in the industry that have a God-given gift. He's got a God-given gift for melody. Yeah. That guy could probably burp a melody and it would sound awesome. He really has it like 3 or 4 notes and you go, wow, I'll never forget that. Yeah. So that was a sad study for me in the frustration that must come with learning the craft, achieving some modicum, in his case a huge modicum of success, and then not being relevant a week later, a day later, a year later, but yet you've still got all the tools. Wow, I don't know. I really feel for him. But you know what? He recalibrated. He's working in the Christian market now. Cool. He's married to Paula White, the pastor, and he is making Christian records and touring a lot and still going out with Journey. So happy ending on that one. But a lot of my friends in Nashville that are now 50, 60, 70 years old that had a lot of hits in 1983 aren't having hits anymore.
Yeah.
And they join Taxi and scare me.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a testament to you that you feel so responsible for your members.
I want everybody who's working at it to get something for all that work.
Of course. And it's challenging when folks might think, I wrote 3 songs and they really, to me, I swear they sound like they should be cut, and then they don't get cut, and it's challenging. And on the flip side, you never know. You never know if your natural sound is somehow on the pulse of what's going on. It's worth a try.
Case in point, 2 guys named Jim Funk and Eric Hickenlooper. Doesn't get more country than that. And these guys lived in Utah.
Okay.
And they were writing in the back bedroom of a farmhouse and recording on an Alesis ADAT and had to stop tape every time a cow moved. This is all true. And they wrote a song called Little Things. and they were taxi members.
Yeah.
And the song Little Things got played at a Taxi Road Rally, our convention, if anybody doesn't know about it. And there was a publisher named Rex Benson that was on the panel, and he said, that song will get cut someday. Cool. And they walked up to him after the panel, and they said, well, if you're so confident that our song will get cut, would you publish it? And he went, okay.
Wow.
But
they had to ask.
They did.
They had to ask. They had to suggest, well, here's how you could help us. Here's what you could do.
And it ended up being Kenny Rogers' hit, Buy Me a Rose.
Wow.
And the funny thing is that Kenny heard it. I think the story goes, it was the 7th time that Kenny heard the song. And he looked at Rex and said, why haven't you ever played that for me before?
Yeah.
So clearly it didn't tickle Broca's area because he didn't remember it. But, you know, people want to believe that there's like this mafia of people trying to keep you out of the industry.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, the other 6 times Kenny Rogers was distracted. He was thinking about what he's going to have for dinner, or that he was going to be away from his wife for a month while touring, or pain in his back, whatever. It just didn't click in that moment.
Did you say shaving his back?
Yeah, that's what I said. Exactly. No, we can't make fun of Kenny Rogers. He could still come back and have one more hit. Although I heard he quit. I heard Kenny Rogers was like retiring.
I don't believe it.
Yeah, I don't either.
Not.
Not for a minute. So this all brings us full circle. My last little soliloquy over 7 minutes there to sounding dated. And we talked about modernizing, you know, where you start your melody and stuff. But how does somebody, do you have a prescription, if you will, somebody that just is struggling? They know they sound dated. They've at least come that far, because admitting you've got the problem is a big part of your recovery, I think.
Yes.
So they know that they sound dated. What's the starting point? Where do they break it all down and start anew?
Yeah.
Is there such a thing as, you know, whack yourself in the head and go, okay, I'm not going to be dated anymore, and I know it's my melodies that sound dated. What do they do?
Okay. I think that Sting doesn't produce his own records. He could, but he doesn't, you know. I think the thing is, you got to involve other people, which involves a level of trust. You have to trust another person whom you think is an excellent musician. So I think that's the thing, is instead of just looking at who do I have available that would be willing, or that I would have a great time with, you know, sitting around doing whatever, looking at my song, really put some effort into, even if I had to develop myself a little bit financially with my time, who would I like to work with, you know, and then connect that with who might I be able to get to, who might be available. And it might be a singer who's had some experience, who sung quite a lot of songs, maybe knows your genre, is also a writer. But I would reach out to other people, and I would slim down that demo. I think I was talking about this when you were out, to just bare bones, one instrument and the vocal. Because I think, you know, certainly that dated sound can be taken... Your attempted production, right? Yeah. And you don't want, you know, that's so sad if you've got a good song and then you demo it in a certain way. And this happens all the time in demo sessions. In Nashville, I've got many demos that we re-demoed. Sometimes we'd do a full demo, realize this isn't hitting quite the way we wanted it, and so we'd do a new vocal, and sometimes we would do a guitar vocal. Mm-hmm. Just go right back to the beginning.
There are still people that like a guitar vocal in Nashville, which is always heartening to me.
Yeah. You
know, half the people out there only play guitar.
Sure.
And so they're limited by that. And, it's hard to take an acoustic guitar and make a modern pop song out of that.
So that would be a different situation, right?
Okay.
Where you definitely don't want to sound as if you don't understand how people would naturally want to be pitched songs. So you want to do a little research, and you have tons of resources on Taxi's website that I was looking at that help us to understand how to demo, what would be expected. I mean, the number of songs that you hear on the radio is such a small. It's like a little sliver cross section of all the songs that were written.
Yeah.
To try to get the singles out there, and so do as much research as you possibly can. Listen to the artists who are referred to you by, the artists that are similar to those artists, and figure out what they're doing and try to understand the differences between the way
write
they
it
sound.
down. Yeah.
Yes, try.
You can't keep all that stuff in your head. Some of it seeps in via osmosis. But I found when I was transitioning from engineer to producer, I would love to hang out with your husband and have this conversation. Because you go through an imitative, first you go through, oh, look, I got signal from the microphone to the meter on the tape machine. Look at me, woohoo.
Right.
And then you go through this imitative stage where I got so-and-so's guitar sound, or my mix sounds like another engineer who I really, really admire.
Yeah.
I lost my train of thought. What were we talking about right before that? Was
dated demos and stuff like that.
Yeah, I lost it.
We're recording a guitar vocal that we can hear through guitar vocal.
Yeah, I remember that, but I lost it. Anyway, it must not have been that important. But you go through this imitative stage.
Yeah.
But once you master the craft, then you can transcend and find your own voice, whether it's engineering, producing, or writing.
This is true.
And your voice has to be going full circle to what we talked about much earlier in the show. It's got to be a voice that fits in a cubbyhole that the industry has going on right now.
Right.
And then you get resistant writers or artists, but mostly writers, that go, I don't want to fit in a cubbyhole. Okay.
And that is okay. If you decide you don't want to, but then don't expect that you'll be heard and understood. Yeah.
Which cubbyholes equate to opportunity, which equates to success, which equates to earning a living doing what you love.
Right. Yes. So do we have questions that we are to field, or
but I still have some here for you.
Okay.
Have you been getting some that you've been writing down too? Great. Okay. So we found that among Taxi's members, be it on the chat room during these shows, which I'm not seeing my chat room today, but hi guys. I guess I could center myself a little better. When our members are asked to give feedback on other members, I see this on our forum all the time, they give some pretty darn good feedback.
Yeah, writer to writer.
Yeah. But when one of our screeners gives them feedback, it's like, what does that dude know? I'm deeply appreciative of the fact that we do shows where we have the people in the chat room critiquing music, and they seem to learn, because it's easier to critique somebody else's thing, and I think that creeps back into your own skill set. When they sit down to write, they go, oh yeah, I remember critiquing that guy in the forum or on Taxi TV. I'm doing the same darn thing.
Yeah.
So I like that. So do you ever find that as a teacher and a songwriter, that what you're teaching your students,
all
that
the time,
like later down the line you're writing and going, crap, I was telling people in my class that.
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time. The things that I listen, that I hear, and the things that are the things that I hear happening in someone else's song are ultimately things that I'm focused on sometimes in my own writing. Yeah. So it's really important when I'm listening to other people's stuff that I try to understand where they are coming from, and try to get through the this is dated. Okay, but let's just take the song. What would I change if, to get to where I think this should be? And that's just me, But I think it's really important to kind of understand that feedback, especially from the screeners who have writing backgrounds, the musical people, and they have an understanding of what it might take to get that song successful in the industry. I think, it's not like they can spend an hour listening to every song and respond in detail and with craft suggestions. So I think one thing that we can do as Taxi members is to take this feedback and try to make more sense of it. And so as you're playing your song for other people, reread that feedback again, sit with the feedback and imagine, am I getting some of the same critiques from
Commonality.
various sources.
Absolutely.
And I can say, all right, so I got one person felt and noticed that such and such is happening, you know. What do you think in context of this song? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
You know, what do you think? What could that tell me about all my songs? You know, because a lot of times if we submit several songs for critique, there will be some patterns which show us our tendencies. You know, I tend to put more emphasis on the groove and the production than I do the lyric, and the lyric is a bit of an afterthought, and that's why there's a lot of cliches, or it sounds like the lyric is crammed into a really tight space, and it's awkward to sing or whatever. And so I think it's really helpful to keep considering that feedback so that you can then decide what are some of the tendencies that are coming up for me, so that you can also know your strengths too, because there is something working in every single song that's submitted. But oftentimes we don't hear that in the critique.
We actually tell the screeners that they should always lead with the thing that works best, because it shows somebody that you care and that you're listening with an open mind and you've noticed that thing of quality, whether it might be as simple as, I love the texture of your vocal in the demo, and then you find out it's actually not them singing. Oh well, it's still a great vocal in the demo. But we have found over the years through experimentation that opens up the mind to the rest of the feedback. And absolutely, I could not agree with you more that people should actually keep a spreadsheet. I mean, that may be taking it to an extreme, but certainly keeping track. If you hear your melody meanders in the chorus and there's not enough contrast from the verse over and over again, after you've heard that 3 times, the eyebrows should go up. After you've heard it 5 to 10 times, you should go, okay, that's a serious problem I need to fix. And the part about receiving feedback that is really, really difficult is that you create music, songs in particular, from your musical soul. It's, here I am. I'm putting me out on that table for everybody to look at and decide if they love me, they hate me, or they want to slice me and dice me, however they want to react to it.
Yeah.
And so it's an extension of you, but yet you have to separate it and go, it's just a friggin' song and I'm going to write another one.
It's not all I have. Yeah.
So how have you, as a pro songwriter, been able to develop thicker skin, because they are, you know, it's you, but it's your song. How do you separate the two?
I think I have so much compassion and empathy, I think, for people who are not in a major music city where you're told, well, deal with it. You know, there's all kinds of other people who are trying to do the exact same thing that you're doing. When you're not in a major market, you don't see that. You might, and it's totally reasonable that you would think that you're quite unique and that the songs that you're writing are innovating, you know, on the craft, and especially when, you know, you do coffee house gigs and people really do enjoy it. And there's a difference between marketing yourself to your fans and marketing yourself to
the industry.
Very, very different. And so I think, you know, be kind to yourself. That's the first thing. Be kind, because not everybody, and most, I think, are not going to be able to express to you how to fix the thing that they see not happening. So I think that's where we need to do our research as songwriters. You use the example of the meandering melody. There are books, resources, YouTube videos, all kinds of things. If you really search for melodic motif, how to write a strong melody, I mean, you're going to come up with tons of resources on that, and then really try it on. But I think the idea to isolate one element of the song that you're getting feedback on, and then take 2 steps that week. That's all, 2 steps to try to find a resource that speaks to that.
A good resource, yeah. That's part of the process, is not just finding a resource that resonates with you, but finding a resource that you can trust. Because I've seen that as an engineer producer. I look at a lot of forums online, and while I'm certainly not actively doing it today, there's a craft There's
Yeah.
a bass craft that you learn about
Yeah.
miking instruments and
Yeah.
mixing and stuff. And I see a lot of guys that are espousing information that it sounds good. If I were somewhat ignorant, it would sound really good to me.
Yeah.
But being somebody who's been down the road, you read it and go, sounds better than the actual quality of the information. So,
But that's no different than anything else,
right, you
In
got to
this day and age,
source it from several
You gotta
places
think.
and look for commonality.
Right.
Yeah.
Commonality. That's so
Yep.
true. So true.
Pro writer mistakes versus newbie or still developing writer mistakes. Do you tend to see some patterns with pro writers that if they have a failure and
If
okay, when they have a failure to launch,
Right.
are they still making common mistakes, and are they different from what newer people would make, or are they similar?
so interesting. So I can mention names and things.
Yeah.
Craig
Please do.
Craig Wiseman is an extremely prolific writer.
I have, just so
Right.
you know, I've got a picture of his butt crack. Just in case you were wondering.
I wasn't wondering.
He and I went fishing one time, and he was bending over, reeling in the big one. And his butt crack was showing. I took a picture. I sent it to
Awesome.
Ralph Murphy, who promptly, I think, sent it to everybody in Nashville. Anyway,
So
and he
that's
had
out there digitally.
And he had a red toenail.
Nice.
I remember that. Anyway, sorry.
What were we talking about?
Craig Wiseman,
Yeah, okay.
a prolific,
So
which he is, yes.
He writes probably 1,000 songs a year.
Yeah.
A year. And
That's 3 a day, just to put it in context.
Yeah. And then you've got other writers, and I'm blanking on the name that I want to find right now, who will write 8 songs a year. And so these two writers have very different processes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, what I would think about is kind of that the gate through which they allow their ideas to flow is at a very different rate, But they both get, significant number of those percentage-wise, ratio-wise cut. So as far as mistakes, I think you like I tell my writers in the pop music program at USC, it's hard for them to write a bad song anymore.
Right.
Just something that everybody's like, whoa, you're changing tempo all over the place. What keys was it? It's
Right.
hard.
Their worst would be better than everybody else's best because
Yeah,
they
yeah.
got that lifetime of craft experience under their
Yeah.
belt.
So I think it's the same, for a pro writer. The worst case scenario would be that you would write a song that's kind of forgettable because it sounds similar to whatever else is out there. But I could name, I probably shouldn't, but some songs that are big hits that frankly they satisfy the mediocre.
Mm-hmm.
And they show off the vocalist's voice, and it's simple piano, but I wouldn't, knowing the writer's other work, I certainly wouldn't say that they finished that song and thought, this is going to get cut. It's more than likely it was hey, will you write this song for so-and-so? It's for this movie spot.
Right.
And we need it to emotionally do this, huge climax in the bridge, whatever. So, and that's okay. But I think that in general, pro writers just recognize that if you're a lifer, you just write a lot, and you can't take every song as the last thing that you're going to write, what your entire identity hinges on. You're just going to quit. You're just going to implode.
What about still developing writers? If you could wave your magic songwriter teacher wand and make one problem that seems to be endemic throughout most, if not all, what would that problem be?
Spending gobs of time booking shows and recording for 9 months and not writing a thing. That's probably what I would say.
That's a great answer. I like that.
Yeah.
That's fun. Earlier today, I was thinking about people who spend all this time working on social media and marketing and building their email list and all this stuff that they work on, but their songs are mediocre at best. And it's like, why bother? But in their mind, the songs aren't mediocre, and I understand that.
Sure.
But
Sure.
yeah, great song does tend to find daylight. Mediocre song stays hidden forever.
Yeah. Well, and you don't know. I mean, realistically, I understand why we do that. You don't know. You put out a record because it's the best you could do at that time. and you see if it floats, and you do your best, but at the same time continue writing. Don't let it go.
Let's move on to viewer questions. You know why? Because right here, how much time do we have? We have 15 minutes right there. Yellow highlight says viewer questions. Your turn. I'm pointing at a chat room that's empty. Lay one on me, please.
Okay, this is from Brad Gray. Do you ever get hung up on a song you've written, meaning that a song you've written and you feel is good, and others maybe don't see it that way? What do? Do you rewrite?
Okay, so I'm just in case, because Ariana's 4 feet away from the backside of the microphone. If you have a song that you feel really good about and it's not gaining any traction in so many
Or
words?
someone else just disagrees, like maybe a publisher or another writer that you show it to.
So if you feel strongly and the people around you don't feel strongly about a song, do you say, oh, well, I'm in the minority and put it away, or do you keep going and try and make it so damn good that they can't feel the way they do anymore?
I think that's such a great question. All the time that I'm putting into rewriting or redemoing, thinking about that song, I am taking away from new things that I write, new networks that I make. So, if aspiring to, I'm going to go out Thursday night instead of working on this song because I have 2 hours to meet, Lisa Loeb at the Tower Records, whatever, dating myself here. But anyway, to see, to see what I can learn from that, or laying down a batch of 5 new songs with my friend who can lay down good guitar. So I guess I see that as I'm going to take the opportunity to do what's best for me and plan a little bit, which means, yes, I want to stand up for the things I've made that I feel strongly about. And at the same time, I think to do that at the expense of other activities that I know are going to put me in a position where I can get better co-writes, produce better songs, is not doing myself a service. How's that answer?
I get it. Somebody somewhere in my lifetime said to me once that introspection plants the seeds of self-doubt, which grows a procrastination tree.
Sure.
It took me years
Sure.
to understand that, but that could be applied to that song. If you're gonna just sit there and think it to death, or just go use your time wisely elsewhere.
And it could be something where once you get a co-write that you think, whoa, this person's really good, I'm going to risk taking that song to that person, because ultimately another writer might be key in helping you get out of the space your mind is stuck in that you can't get out of. Of course, that takes some trust, because you'll have to say, I'm going to relinquish my control over this and let somebody else help me finish it. Particularly if it's someone who has some musical connections that you don't have. If their name's on it and they were able to make the song more, I'm going to go pitchable, then that only does you a service rather than,
Isn't it funny how we look at art, in that way, but yet in relationships, how many people did you date before you said, yes, I want to marry that guy and married your husband? But yet with art, it's like art gets some sort of special place on, the hierarchy that it's great. And you can't just keep trying and trying on different shoes till you find the one that fits, which...
It's very different if you're pitching again to the industry.
Yeah.
If you're an artist and an indie artist and who cares? Do your songs the way you want to do them and the way your fans love to hear them. It's a totally different industry. So if you find that you're coming up against that a lot, maybe you need to listen to your artist voice and see how your career might look differently.
People have said to me many times during my career that be true to yourself. Sooner or later, the industry will come around to where you're at. And while that may be true some of the time, maybe oftentimes, you're going to be too old, too fat, too tired, too something. There's a timeline that puts pressure on people, and that makes them have to chase fads versus being utterly true to him or herself, which is kind of a bummer. It's a sad part of the industry, but it's true.
You know what I found, though?
Right.
If you're not true to yourself, you find yourself in writing rooms and writing sessions with people you don't really enjoy being with. I've had this happen too, where I've thought, why am I here? I'm not connecting with this 16-year-old in the fur coat who's writing.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, good, geez, is this what it's come down to? And it's okay if I walk in and I say a certain amount of 25% of my time I'm going to do that, because that's a good decision for my future. But
Do you
it
know
is
who
very
Cara
calculated.
Diaguardi?
Yeah.
So she and I became friends many years ago. It was kind of earlier in her career. And I remember her telling me how many times that she's been in a room with the 16-year-old with the fur coat.
Yeah.
Cara is gifted with her special talent is getting past that
Yes.
and making it work on a
Yes.
level that the rest of us can only envy. She's got
Yes.
that talent.
Yes.
Next question, please.
So this is Sean Haley's question. How do you recommend adding different genres to writing in your main style? I write Americana and add other styles,
Cool.
but what's helped you all break into new habits?
Okay, so basically it's how do you get out of your old style and develop new styles, new genres.
What a great question. So
Yeah.
I have the suspicion that Sean is actually quite good at getting out of his skin and trying on these different styles just because he's thinking about it. I'll be the first to admit I wouldn't be the kind of person to ask that question to. I have seen my songs take on a whole new life that I didn't expect in different genres because of the producer's vision, the producer and engineer's vision. And sometimes by very, very intentionally trying to find collaborators who are really great in that genre. And then, of course, listening a lot to those other genres, which I would always do, even if I'm Americana. I'm going to be listening to all kinds of other stuff, so I'm not just rewriting what everybody else is writing.
Yeah.
But that would be my thing. Is it sounds like he's on the right road, and search out people that are much better than Sean, than you are, in that genre. Rely on other people's strengths, because you're also bringing them your strength that they can't access without you.
I'm going to get personal.
Yeah.
When you and your husband crawl under the sheets at night and the pillow talk begins and it goes to the industry, and you're expressing self-doubt or you're hung up on something that you wish had happened and it's not coming together, is it really hard to be married to somebody that's a sounding board, that's got the professional tool set to be that sounding board? Do you drive him crazy, or does it break his heart when he can't solve the problem? How does that all work in a relationship?
Right. We blame each other for our failures.
That's healthy.
Yeah. Ultimately, he would say that I've given him appreciation for lyrics and for songs that he didn't have before. And that said, I listen to music very differently because of him. But we definitely get in. We got our fights in the studio for sure. He's got his style, and he'll bring that to my songs every time, even if I don't want it.
Got it.
And there are times where we don't work together because he can't. He knows his limitations too.
Yeah.
As a professional in his industry, so he wouldn't even begin to think that he should produce everything that I'm doing. So yeah, it's not as spectacular as you might think, but he's very honest with me too about my songs, and which is why I don't ever play him one song at a time.
Smart.
Because I would be destroyed if I did.
Yeah. When pitching, some people are of the mind that don't play the best song first, because the natural reaction, especially Nashville publishers, although they are really trying to be helpful much of the time, the first thing out of the gate is usually easily rejected, I always saw. And sometimes I would actually get out of my chair and head to the door and go, there's one other thing I should probably play you, although I don't think it's for you. And that worked really, really well, I got to say.
Wow, your business side's coming out.
Yeah.
I was never that smart.
All right, next question, please.
All right, this is another Brad Gray question. How do you separate the good advice from the not so good, amateur versus pro?
I think we covered that one, but
Wow. the good advice versus the not so
I
good.
think we covered amateur versus pro.
And good advice versus bad, we
Publishers.
covered it with, what's the word I'm looking, triangulate. Look at many sources and look for a certain amount of agreement among those sources, then you know that you're on to something. I could let her answer because she is my guest, but
Yeah, seeing the patterns.
Yeah.
Seeing the patterns. I think that's probably good. I mean, every writer, I think we should always have 3 or 4 people that we really value their opinion. And I think one thing that they could do is to be able to give us feedback that if we ask for them to dig deeper into that feedback, they could give us some clarity. It's not just, I'm not feeling it. Well, why aren't you feeling it? Is it a melodic thing? Is it a lyric thing?
I don't know. I'm just not feeling it. Feel it!
Feel it! Yeah. But the more that you exercise your own ability to give feedback to the songs you listen to, that's a teaching tool. So when we give feedback, we're actually honing our own craft. And so sometimes feedback is more useful, more readily available in how to apply it to the person giving the feedback than it is the person receiving the feedback. So
Yeah.
it's because Nashville publishers have listened to so many songs and tried to verbalize what they're feeling, where it's lacking, what's working, that the feedback is so good.
Sometimes I wonder if our feedback forms here are based, it all started with John Brahaney 20.
Oh, he's amazing.
Yeah,
He's
28,
gonna write a
29
good-
years ago.
Yeah.
And over the years, we've taken what I learned from him in the first feedback form that he designed for Taxi, and we've modified it because we do find, and we've gotten the same screener from every generation, same feedback from every generation of screeners. Most of the problems are common.
Yeah.
And so rather than trying to write out longhand an articulate description of a problem, we've just made them into checkboxes,
Totally.
which some people might see as an easy way out, but we would rather have them take the time they're going to type for the one thing that is unique versus the
Yeah.
common problems.
Yeah.
Just an observation on my
Yeah.
part.
Sure.
Where do you do your retreats? Here in LA or in Nashville?
Thank you for asking. So I have a retreat this summer coming up in July, the week of the 21st. I have a retreat in September in New York.
Where's the one this summer?
This summer, yeah.
Oh, that is the sum-
Jolton is the one just north of Nashville in
Okay.
Jolton.
Yeah.
At a beautiful retreat center. So, and another one in New York, and then one later on in LA.
And
so-
describe the retreats. Are they
Yeah.
10 people, 20 people? How does the day start?
We have a limit of 30.
Okay.
And we have guests who come, and it's really craft based though, and a lot of the things that I've kind of dipped into today as far as how to understand critique, really it's about being able to learn to hear your own instinctive voice, being able to understand what do you do that's strong. So what are your tendencies then also as far as your writing? How do your melodies tend to go? How do your lyrics tend to go? And how can you harness those strengths as you continue to write? There are collaboration activities that we do. We do
How long is the whole
song
retreat?
presentations.
Is it like a weekend or a week?
It's Monday through Friday.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so do you pair people up in advance based on what you've heard them submit before the retreat started? Or how do you match them up with potential
Not
collabs?
necessarily, because personality matters quite a bit, but my team and I do a great deal of listening to their music so we understand. And there's an application process, too, to make sure the dynamic of the group is healthy and productive.
Can somebody be, I don't want to say bad enough, can somebody be not developed enough to not be allowed to join you for the retreat? Do they have to be
The
at a
short
certain
answer,
level?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you definitely want to create the opportunity for people to continue on. And there's also alumni retreats so
Okay.
that people can come together and grow their network and help each other. But it's really about creating a community through which you can receive feedback, understand the feedback, write better songs, and get there quicker. So a lot of the tools
Yeah.
that I teach in my face-to-face courses and my online courses are kind of summarized in a way. And also as far as what resources are out there, the cost of resources. I have X amount of time, or I live in Utah. What can I do? And I love having those conversations, because that could have been me had I not had the family that was able to send me to Berkeley at 18. So I consider myself extremely lucky to have been able to pursue this when I did.
Where'd you grow up?
Minnesota.
Okay.
Yeah. And I love that. I love reaching songwriters who have a desire, have a talent, and they simply need the opportunity, the situation where they can nurture that and get somewhere.
There are years when the road rally's over and I go get in my car Sunday night, 9 o'clock to leave, and I've been known to burst into tears just because
awesome.
Had a whole weekend of watching. I will just sit there and quietly cry by myself in the Weston circular driveway because I see lives get changed. And it's a remarkable feeling to know that something you did brought these people together that otherwise never would have met in their lifetime, and something came out of it that was the sum was greater than the parts. And
so true. True.
How about people that say to you, because I'm sure they do, they say to me all the time, why don't you just do, have a live video cam for the road rally? My contention is the magic doesn't happen unless you're in a room with people.
Yeah.
That's where the chemistry works. It's hard to do it. You can teach on a camera, but you can't have people grow together on a camera.
Right. Yeah, community is really, really important, and it's hard to find community on your own. It takes a lot of legwork, and there's a great deal of time involved. And so I think a beauty of the road rally and the retreats are that we've already kind of screened people in the sense where you can find your people, and the road rally doesn't get too big. That's another thing I love about it, where and there's plenty of opportunities to connect more intimately with people, like around the luncheon tables and stuff like that. So I think that's really important. Yeah,
it used to be everything in one room, and then it got to the point where it was just too much of that.
Yeah.
And we started adding things to personalize it, give people options. A good observation on your part. Where can people learn about the retreats? Your website, andreastolpe.com?
Go to andreastolpe.com, and right now the retreat in Nashville is just opening up, and so for people who register before April 1st, I think they get like $500 off.
Wow.
The cost of the retreat, and it's so lovely because all the meals are taken care of. The rooms, the retreat centers are beautiful, so it's tons of fun, and I love doing it.
Somebody once said to me the best way to meet people in the music industry is go to rehab. So this is like rehab without the drugs, right?
Yeah, without the substance.
Without the actual rehab.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you. Been enjoyable having you on the show. Andrea is going to join us for the Road Rally this year and teach a class there. Let me hold the books up again.
Oh, yeah.
And remember, folks, I really need like one of those little stands like Jay Leno used to have to put stuff on the desk. Anyway,
you can have a chair for that.
Yeah, you can get these books by going in the comment area underneath the video on YouTube. After the show, we'll take a minute for the show to render, the video to render, but go in there and comment what you like best about the show, ask a question. Would you go check our video out in the comment section a day from now? And if there are a couple of questions, would you give a couple answers? Thank you. And the persons, because we've got two books, who gives the best question and the best comment about the show, one of each of you will win a book. How's that? We will mail it to you, and if you're not from the United States, then don't play the game. I'm kidding. The postage suck. That's all right. We'll send it over in one of the empty airplanes with the non-coronavirus carrying passengers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Been fun having you. Thank you for letting me go cough up a lung in the middle of the show and covering it very, very well. I will see, special thing I should let you know about. Next week, Mr. Ken Clich, the Grammy-winning co-producer of Fleetwood Mac's Rumors and Tusk, and there's a third one I can't remember the name of. Anyway, I'm going to his studio, and we're going to interview Ken. He was a huge hit at last year's Road Rally. Going to interview him about the making of Tusk. If you want to hear the story of musical debauchery and what drugs can do to the kids, don't miss next week's episode. Ken's awesome. He tells a great story, and I've read the book, and it's pretty cool. So check us out next week for another exciting episode of Taxi TV Live. Woohoo! I wonder what it sounded like if I didn't do woohoo.